Hi everyone, it's Bob Pulver. In this episode, I spent time with my friend Kyle Lagunas from Aptitude Research about the state of AI in HR. We discussed the evolution of talent in HR technologies, emphasizing the need for responsible and ethical AI adoption and the importance of increasing AI literacy among HR professionals. We also emphasized the importance of community and sharing best practices to navigate the AI landscape effectively. As you'll hear in each episode, I asked all my esteemed guests what they recommend to elevate one's AIQ, so check out Kyle's thoughts. I hope you enjoy my discussion with Kyle, and thank you for listening. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Elevate Your AIQ. I'm your host, Bob Pulver. With me today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Kyle Lagunas from Aptitude Research. How's it going, Kyle?
Hello, my little blueberries. Thanks for having me on, Bob.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So, Kyle, for those who have been living under a rock and don't know who you are, or perhaps outside of talent in HR, just a quick sort of intro and background.
Absolutely. So, Kyle Lagunas. I work at Aptitude Research, and we do research on the state of the space, looking at the evolution of talent in HR technologies, looking at emerging trends and pressing priorities on the practitioner side. And yeah, my background has actually kind of run the gamut. I've been in research for most of my career. Worked at IDC, built a program there. Worked at a boutique firm called Brandon Hall Research. I've been here at Aptitude for 2 years now. I did step my toe into the vendor space. I was a head of strategy at Beamery, a recruiting CRM company out of London. I was there during their Series B to Series C, which was a really interesting scale up proof of concept time. I helped us find our ICP. And then I also got recruited from Beamery to go over and lead a TA transformation, like help support, participate in a transformation at General Motors, and did not last on the practitioner side very long. It was a really, really tough gig. So now in my work here, I like have this new fire in me. Before like researchers, I mean, Bob, you've been a researcher. You're kind of in an ivory tower, right? And you're like looking out at the space, just thinking. But I feel pretty grounded now in like what people need and what they want and what they're ready for from a practitioner and solutions point of view. And so the AI conversation is like, it's like sweet spot for me because it's just this culmination of everything. There's all this innovation out there, and there's limited adoption out there, and I'm helping to kind of like mediate between these two sides of the industry.
And you're doing a fabulous job, I must say.
Thank you.
I've only known you the last couple of years, but you really seem to be in your groove here. So I think that's great.
I'm in my
I am a big
happy place
fan.
now.
Right. There you go. Yeah, I'm a fan of Beamer. I'm actually going to have Sultan on the podcast pretty soon.
Great.
So when we think about the space, one of the things that I've noticed, I've gone to a couple of events. I know you've gone to a bunch and spoken at a lot. One of the things that I noticed at Unleash was, a lot of conversation. I would say, probably 90% of the conversations I had, involved AI to some degree. But when it came to responsible AI as a topic, as an umbrella of topics, it seemed like when that conversation was happening, I was the one initiating the topic of conversation, and so with a couple exceptions, but I'm curious what you're hearing from either the practitioners, the people trying to figure out where to place their bets, which
Yeah.
solutions to trust and which vendors to trust and things like that. In the absence of legislation, obviously lots of pending legislation with again very few exceptions. It just seems like people are still just trucking along trying to get their shiny objects out there. How do you view this?
So it is interesting if you because the conversation has changed dramatically over the last 18 months since ChatGPT came into mainstream. Look, and I'm going to say, like, I am purported to be some talent tech expert. I didn't even know about ChatGPT until like GPT-3. Like, I just didn't know. Like, our friend Tim Sackett was sending me like articles about it. I'm like, what is this? I don't know. It's a chatbot. I don't know. But anyway, so all that to say, it has shifted really, really dramatically in the big picture conversations. Like, responsible, ethical, because now we have to think about systems that can interact back and forth without prompts, without like a prompt library, without like an FAQ, like for it to reference. That's what most chatbots, by the way, do on a career site. You are giving it boundaries on what it can query and what it can, how it can like respond. Now we have these interfaces that can infer and maybe even hallucinate. It's trying to answer your questions. It's going to give you its best guess, right? And I'm seeing use cases now where we have fully automated screening, where it literally calls you. It's not just a chatbot. It will call you and use a generated voice, and it will run through the screening, questionnaire, and then thank you for your time. So that we are now in the territory where not just some of these AI use cases in HR could impact like how much workforce we need. Like, there's still a lot of manual work that gets done. Automation was starting to impact a little bit. Now we're wondering, could we replace work? Like can AI do some of the work that people have been doing? That's not just admin stuff. So I think we are starting to get into this like new, like the ante has been upped big time. And we're getting distracted with it, Bob, if I may say. Like, we're getting a little distracted with these edge use cases. And edge, I don't mean like just strange and abstract. I mean like at the edge of innovation, we're getting distracted. There's still a lot of work being done with just automation. Like, and automation isn't just like RPA of like, moving back and forth between processes, like doing the same thing, repeating again and again. We are starting to see artificial intelligence and automation intersecting, and it's more like we're seeing intelligent automation. And that work, I think, is still really important for enriching employee experiences, reducing drag on HR operational resources, improving like synchronization between systems, like driving better integration across systems that span like a whole talent journey. Like that work I still see being done. It's not the flashy stuff, but it's foundational, and I am hopeful that the folks that are trying to drive the evolution of HR at their organizations are not getting overburdened with these edge use case questions from legal and compliance and you know concerned citizens in their organization asking about bias, like, which is happening. It's slowing us all down. I hope we're able to keep doing like that ground level work that's just kind of increasing our operating capacity to prepare us for some of this more advanced use cases that we're seeing rapidly emerging.
Yeah, no, I think you're raising really important points because I feel like if it's digital labor, I'll just use that phrase that one of the big four teams used to use when I was at NBC, but they talked about this automation maturity, right? It was RPA, robotic process automation, just the routine, mundane stuff, and then moving up to having a little bit of, sort of if then kind of rules where it's a little bit more intelligent, and then all the way up to what they referred to at the time of cognitive automation, like which is to your point, this sort of intersection of automation and AI because it's absolutely using machine learning and natural language processing, and then
Welcome to the Hire Her podcast, where women in talent call all the shots. We know, another recruiting podcast, just what the industry needs. Okay, but hear us out. You ever spend hours sourcing that perfect candidate, but they end up ghosting you harder than your hinge date? Or finally, you get that hiring manager feedback, only for them to, of course, say, "Can we see more candidates?" Lame, right? But let's talk about what's really lame in the industry. How is it that 65% of recruiters are brilliant women, yet most of the decision makers look like a convention for middle-aged dudes named Brad?
That's where we come in. Hire Her isn't just another podcast about hiring trends you already heard like 50 times this week. We're here to elevate women in talent, share their career journeys, and make sure they take the lead. Because let's face it, if recruiting is the backbone of every company, why are we still fighting for a seat at the table? So whether you're a recruiter, a talent leader, or just someone trying to swim through the sausage fest of TA leadership, we got you, girl. Welcome to Hire Her, the recruiting podcast where women's voices aren't just heard, but they're leading the conversation.
So subscribe now, because middle management Brad sure as hell isn't going to do it for you.
Understanding how decisions in this instance or in this decision point were made in the past, and so using some historical context and things like that. But I feel like because most organizations sort of were already behind in the automation wave, 2016-ish, 2018, it's now compounded what they're experiencing now,
Right.
exacerbating the sort of overwhelm of, what do I do and how do I deploy the right way to the right, use cases, the right roles.
You know why that's so problematic, Bob? I mean, and you were in seat during that period. We were asking ourselves, and we were smart to, or we were right to, are we automating bias? Because we hadn't debiased our own processes at that point, right? Now the question is, are we going to introduce entirely new layers of complexity into this work where like that generative piece does not just automate what you tell it to, it potentially can come up with new things. So I feel, Bob, that we didn't actually find answers to some of these foundational questions, and we didn't address some of these really important concerns. And now the ante has been upped, and I think that's why we're all like, holy shit, what are we like, wait. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah, we also have this human-centric goal, but are we all even thinking about that in the right way? I mean, I was just in a LinkedIn conversation. We were talking. There was a vendor talking about human centricity to make sure that recruiters aren't, displaced in the process. And I was like, well, I suppose, but when we think about human centricity and human centric AI in the talent acquisition process, we're talking about the human who's actually impacted by the decisions being made, and that's the candidate, right? So, but this is part of the challenge, right? You've got to design. You're simultaneously trying to improve experiences for all parties, hiring manager, recruiter, and candidate, and maintain human centricity, I suppose, for all of them. But that really goes back to: are we displacing jobs? Are we automating or using AI to do too many of the previously human tasks? And now we're talking about the job loss, fears and that anxiety. So there's a lot to balance.
There is. I mean, and it's new things to balance, because in the past, if you had, and you know this because you were in seat, like if you implemented a new piece of talent technology or HR technology, usually the only real risk, or the most significant risk, was that it wouldn't get adopted. It wouldn't get used, right? And then you're like, on all of your recruiters, like, log into the CRM, use the CRM, and they're not, or like, hiring managers, please put your notes in the ATS, please, and we still didn't solve a lot of these, again, foundational things in HR and talent. And I think that's also why we are right to be concerned. I would, you had said something there about like, if we're like, we need to be building human centric solutions, like human centric AI, and like, who is being impacted by these decisions? It's the candidate. I would actually step back and say, who is a stakeholder for these processes and programs? And you have many. And there are behaviors that you are trying to replicate with AI that are a recruiter, a sourcer, a hiring manager, an interviewer, like, there's a lot of different stakeholders now, because we're not just talking about automating one step, or like automated approvals. We are in this territory where AI is listening to what you, Bob, say. It is parsing what you say, right? NLP, and interpreting it, and in making like recommendations based on it. Like, there is a lot that happens in just, I don't think we talk about like just what if you had a really thick Southern accent? Like I'm from the South, and it like the voice AI, like parsing AI, just has a hard time with accents. What if I'm trying to interview somebody that is of Indian background, is an Indian American, has a really thick accent and is struggling. Like there's just so much that can happen with these tools that we didn't solve already. And I think that's where people are getting stuck, because if we had already solved these problems in a manual environment, then they would be less risky now, because we would already have solutions and we would be automating those solutions. Basically, we would be using technology to enhance these solutions, to scale these solutions, and instead we're looking at the tech as a like skeleton key to just like magically unlock all of these problems that we have not solved for. I think that's why we're right to be like, or when we get questions from IT or compliance or legal or even our partners in the business asking us, how is this going to work? Because we haven't had our own solutions for these problems in the past, fully completed solutions, we are right to be like, I actually am not sure. There's just a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to unpack there. One of the things I think about, so I normally save the one specific question I ask each of my guests for the end, but I'm gonna ask it here because I think it's important based on where we are in this conversation, which is the title of the podcast, "Elevate Your AIQ." I mean, when you hear that phrase, and you think about, not all these non-technical, non-AI, experts now being, given these tools. I mean, it's not like these tools are coming; like they're already on everyone's device in
Yeah.
some fashion, right? And so, regardless of what role you're in, what seniority you're in, what industry you're in, and whether you're a knowledge worker, you're a deskless worker, there's something there's some form of sort of digital labor, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
that is coming and is going to change your workflow, going to do some tasks, on your behalf or whatever. And the question for everyone is, what are you going to do about it?
Babe, that is that is there are two very big parts of this problem. The first is that we haven't solved a lot of the problems that we're now looking to AI to solve. And so I've been doing, I now run my third iteration of this study of AI and HR. And one of the questions that we ask in the survey is, what are the biggest concerns and obstacles you have to overcome when it comes to implementing HR or AI in HR? 3 years running now, it has been a lack of understanding of AI within the HR organization. And by the way, other answer options are a lack of capacity, or a lack of expertise within the HR organization. Because you can have one expert implementing an ATS if they've done it before, right? And you don't need the entire organization to know how an ATS implementation works. But the number one obstacle today is that the HR organization does not understand what AI is and how it works. And so you have two knowledge gaps. We didn't solve these problems before, and so we're a little worried about AI solving them because we didn't find the solutions. And now, is AI magic? No. The other half is, we know that AI is not magic, but that's about all we know. And so when you start to get questions, the right questions, by the way, about how does this work and how do we assess the risk of these solutions and in these use cases, the leaders for these projects, HR.
Optimize your business with a Workforce AI Edge powered by Visier. Make smarter decisions and achieve better outcomes with real-time AI insights delivered to every people leader. Explore more at visier.com.
Hello, I'm Ruth Thomas, host of Comp and Coffee, where we break down what's next in the world of compensation management. From pay transparency to performance alignment, we explore how businesses are rethinking compensation to drive impact, equity, and growth. So if you're shaping the future of pay at your organization, grab a cup and tune in. Listen on the Work Defined Podcast Network.
Don't have answers. And again, you might have like one expert on the team who can answer all these questions. That is not enough. It is not enough just for your listeners to be building up their AIQ. It is the responsibility of the entire HR organization to be up leveling their AIQ, because this is not optional. AI is a cornerstone of modern HR operations today. And each one of them, like every person in your HR organization, needs to know the difference between RPA and NLP. If I say those two things, you need to know what they are. If I say machine learning, you need to know what it is. If I talk about knowledge graphs, you need to know what it is. Do you need to be able to write a white paper on it? No. And that is something that I'm hearing as I'm starting to get more perspective on the topic. I'm like, okay, do we need to be experts? And the resounding answer from experts is no. But you need to be literate. You just like the entire or HR organization doesn't need to be employment lawyers. They don't need to be compliance experts, but they need to be at least literate when it comes to compliance. They need to know what, generally speaking, work like is a gray area versus what is like an absolute no. And it's just like, this is a new core competency, and I'm gonna keep building on this if you don't mind. Like, I mean, like, I'm going on a tear, babe. um we see all of these vendors pushing skills-based talent strategies today, right? I have not seen a single one of them actually telling their skills stories around upskilling HR. We are the most at risk of disruption and displacement in the digital age, because we're not like the expertise, the HR expertise, the compliance piece. Guess what's really easy to automate? Compliance expertise. Because you just train this model on any new legislation, any new case, any best practices, and it's going to have a resource library that it can reference instantaneously to a fact, right? Our expertise is actually commoditized if we cannot make it relevant and apply it. And so I'm like, why are we not seeing more skills-based strategies, stories around the need for AI to step up its game? And especially in light of this disruption that we are going through, how could the business trust their HR leadership team to set an agenda for a like integrated workforce and contingent, full-time, and digital if we do not understand digital? Mic drop moment. Like, it's just, I don't get it.
Yeah. We've talked about how some of these skills that we assumed for such a long time were innately sort of human skills. A machine could never do this, and hopefully, that's a squashed sort of myth at this point. But the concept of a knowledge worker is actually changing, because you have all of that knowledge at your fingertips. Every intern could essentially have the team lead, the senior person, as their co-pilot. Like, your onboarding is going to shrink for so many roles. So now it's like you shift into, I guess it shifts to these, human, more technically more durable skills. Are you resourceful? Are you learning? Are you growing? If you know where to find information within 2 seconds, why would I spend 6 months taking, some course, or, learning through, of course, you still need to learn through experience or whatever, but
Right? If HR doesn't know how to use these tools, then how could we govern the use of these tools? Imagine, like HR is just not using any, like, I keep referencing ChatGPT because it's the most well known. I also have whatever Windows is pushing on me on my laptop. But if we have never even used one of these tools in our like day to day life, let alone work, then how could we say no? That's not. We can't use it here at work that way. It's just mind-boggling. We did the same thing with social media, by the way. And remember like all the hell that was raised around BYOD. Like, we are going to the same behavior where we're trying to police the use of it without being practical, and like without really, like, HR wasn't a social media expert and we were being asked to come up with these policies to govern the use of social media, and the workforce was like, this is stupid, this makes no sense. The same thing is going to be happening with AI.
I was at IBM at the time, and they actually crowdsourced input for their what they called their social computing guidelines, but it was grounded in trust that we're going to treat you like adults. Here's some basic, rules of the road. If you're on Twitter, your views are your views. You should state that in your bio. Unless you're in, marketing, you're one of our internal, influencers or whatever. You are not out there speaking on behalf of the company. It was all grounded in trust. We're going to trust people to do what's right. Now, you still want to have some parameters in place, right? You need, just like you have data privacy, you have cybersecurity, these types of things. You don't want to have people putting in, proprietary sensitive information into, black box, platforms. And we've seen, some horror stories about that already. But you've got to start putting some parameters in place so that people know, because this is, shadow IT on steroids, right? Everyone is using it. I mean, you look at all the surveys, it's like, oh, well, only 30% or whatever companies are actively using it, but you ask the employees and it's like 85%.
Oh, completely. You know what's interesting though? They're like, you said trust, and I really love that because I felt the same way during the social. I mean, I at the time I was like a millennial. Everybody was dogging on us for whatever, but like I was more of a social media native than like the people making decisions. So I trust really resonated with me because I wish people were pushing best practice rather than policing use.
What happens when employees behave badly? Boy, we could do an entire TV show, maybe a Netflix special on that. Well, Ryan and I sat down and recorded episodes for FAMA, and we asked practitioners, give us your most outrageous story. The sales leader that brings cocaine to work, whatever. Just bring us the outrageous, and it is funny. So if you need a laugh, which we all do from time to time, search for workplace misconduct wherever you get your podcast, and you'll find it. And trust me, you will laugh and cry, but you'll definitely laugh. All right. Thank you.
But trust is, what do you think the trust quotient is for HR in general in the workforce? Trust is not very high between the workforce and HR in general. And I just like, are we really going to double down on that divide at this point? And like, like I'm worried really about the HR organization itself. And it's just like traditional resistance to evolving, and like it's I know better than you like mindset, like because we do have to like I'll give HR a bone. We do have more context for a lot of the tough decisions that get made in a business, and so there already is this like predisposition to be like, you know what, Bob, I hear you, I love what you're saying, it's not realistic, it's not going to work, and I know why. We have to find some sort of balance when it comes to this AI thing, because we're really we're putting ourselves in a really another tight spot. By the way, HR is always in a tight spot, but in a really important one. This is like a pivotal cultural, like human experience moment. I think in a way that social media like was this big, which was really big, and AI is like I can't even get my hands on the screen.
Yeah. Stacia just hosted something where they were talking about, it came up like, what's the proper analogy? Is it, electricity? Is it fire? Is it the internet? Is it social media? There's aspects of all the, I don't know about the fire thing, but there's aspects of, that correlate to each of those as an analog. But I think because of the broad, impact, because you're not going to be able to escape, some aspects of AI usage, whether it's, measuring you, judging you, or helping you. It doesn't. I think it's bigger than social media, but I think the trust factor is highly, sort of associated with that, and also the ability to use it as part of your work is really important. And I think if you want to continue working, um, and you don't really have a choice. You've got to continue to experiment. I mean, I applaud the people who are just like, look, just get out there and start playing with it. Ask it random, questions. See, just push its limits and see where it falls short or where it's giving you suspect, kind of information. Because it's in some ways it's your loudmouth know-it-all friend, right? They say
Yeah, yeah.
they have an answer for everything, and it sounds right, and they sound convincing, but they're completely full of shit.
Yeah. And it will tell you, by the way, because I've done it. I'm like, give me like sometimes, I'm trying to write about like 16 different vendors at the same time and trying to find something unique to say about everyone, and it's just like they start to bleed together. But I asked ChatGPT to try and just give me ideas, and it came up with something. I was like, that actually sounds like pretty decent. Where did you come up with this? And it said, it's a general state. I mean, it responds. It's like general, like statements, things that it will tell you. That's the difference between your friend who's full of shit and these Gen AIs is they really will tell you what they know, including like, I got this from just generally available data, and I didn't like, this isn't specific to this. I just was answering about SaaS companies in general, and I think that's what's different now, by the way. You said, get your hands on it and play with it. Most of the Actually, I would say almost all of the HR technology that we have had to date has been delivered to us. It has been handed to us from a central program team that has gone out and shopped for the tech, implemented the tech, manages the tech. And so we really just use what we're given in HR tech. With OpenAI, ChatGPT, Gen AI, we actually can, I mean, you can still implement Gen AI specific solutions in the HR tech stack, right? You can turn on these features in your existing tools. But now the layperson, the end user, can go out and just play with these things. And I think that might also be something that is giving HR organizations like pause, is like, it's we don't know how this is going to be used, right? We can't control how it's being used. And it's not an obsession with control. It's just like, I don't know what the risk is because it's going way out of bounds. But like, the ability for us to interact with these technologies and just experiment is completely novel for HR tech. We have never been able to do it before.
Well, the other key thing about and uniqueness about this particular technology is you can literally ask it to help get better at using it. So it's your tutor while it's your tool or tool set. And I mean, you couldn't go on Twitter and say, what's the best way to use Twitter? I mean, you could put it out there, you could tweet it and get a lot of responses from humans. But it's, in terms of the ability to adopt, you talked about adoption before, like it's so easy to get started and just use it as your guide. It's like a built-in guide into itself, right? That's part of its power. But I think that also makes the learning curve to at least be literate and gain a little bit of skills and elevate
That's
your
it.
IQ just a little bit
That's it.
is self-reinforcing. I mean, sure, there's plenty of free resources you can take to get comfortable, but I think you're right. You've got to sort of ask it some questions, perhaps about guardrails as well, especially in the context, inside a company, so you don't run afoul of HR. Um, but just
That's why I like this concept of literacy. It is just because you don't need to be fluent. You just need to be, know enough to, like, I don't speak French, but I know enough to go to Paris and have them beg me to stop trying to speak French. But I also know that it's really important to them that you don't lead with English. It's offensive, and it should be. But do you know what I mean? Like there is a lot of like just we're talking about risk, and I think there's like a negative connotation in not just the conversation you and I are having now, but in the discourse in public right now. I want to also think about the opportunity, and I think that there is actually way more positive upside and positive potential for HR to lead the way, to lean in. Like, I'm looking at AI, not just what it can technically do, but I'm also looking at it as like a catalyst for driving what I see as a lot of like overdue evolution of the culture of HR, and the function of HR, and helping us to just like radically evolve, being functional experts in like payroll or comp and benefits or talent acquisition. It is enough to get you here, but I really feel like this catalytic power of AI can get you so much further, and maybe to the point where we are going to be delivering like that human centric application of AI. We also could just have more of that like expanded value proposition for HR, where we really can not just be HR experts, but business relevant, human sensitive, and like ethical all the time, because we have just a lot. We're not having to figure out everything all on our own every instance. There's a lot of power here, and it's not just scaling operations. It is being able to just not even ask Bob, like, hey Bob, I've got this really tough like question in front of me, I don't know what to do with it. What about having like an AI HR advisor and just being like, like, what should I do with this? And it's going to coach me. I just think there's a lot that we could be doing, and we're not going to, because we're looking for like clear, crystal clear answers about anything AI right now, and we're getting stuck.
Well, first of all, HR should not feel like this is entirely on their plate, although they should absolutely be sort of co-leading these efforts. But I guess one of the things that came up last night, I was at this New York City strategic workforce analytics event, and one of the guys Jeremy Shapiro, who leads people analytics at Merck Pharmaceuticals, he said, HR needs to understand, like when you bring them this business case for AI, we're doing this for you, not to you, right?
Yeah,
I'm offering you the ability to get more value by doing less.
I literally just got like goosebumps from that. Like, we're doing this for you, not to you. And I think that's so powerful if it comes to AI and HR, like just to change our mental framework for approaching AI and HR is, how do we get it to work for us? Like, and you can't without knowing its boundaries and being comfortable with the gray zone. Like, I love that. Feels empowering. Really, it does.
It was, yeah. I mean, that stuck with me, and because some of the use cases that were presented last night, it's like, oh, we're going to take these specific tasks, and we're going to allow AI to absorb, that domain knowledge or whatever, and be able to answer those questions. Well, that's fine, but that's a question answering scenario. But like you said at the beginning, like we're talking about trying to streamline workflows, and people don't just go in and do individual tasks. We're not appliances. We're not
Yeah.
robots. We handle workflow, and there's all kinds of ins and outs and context, and these things need to connect. And I know, we're not going to have time to go into, agentic and multi-agent kinds of things where this stuff is all over the place, and then the traceability becomes even more
Oh, dude,
complicated.
like we haven't even thought about like integrating interfaces.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
exactly. Like, what are you going to do when you have? I mean, this is a little bit akin to whether you're going to be a multi-cloud, plus hybrid, plus
Yeah,
private cloud, or whatever.
we're gonna
Like,
have to be now.
yeah, you're gonna, if you're a Microsoft shop, you're gonna have Copilot on all your devices, but it doesn't mean you're not gonna ever use a Gemini or whatever. So I think So we've got to think about that. But just going back to the point around HR, like, yes, you've got a key, very, very important role to play, but you're not expected to do this on your own. And so I guess I'm curious about your perspective and the conversations you've had and some of the survey participants you've heard from in terms of the strength of partnership across HR, IT, data.
I mean, look, this thread is pulling through from the beginning. We hadn't solved any of those issues before this either. Like data systems, like people process tech, like there are still problems that we hadn't addressed and hadn't found perfect solutions for. And I think that these like underpin modern operations. And I think that I'm seeing teams that are getting better with it. I really feel like it's going to be more important than ever to solve some of these things that were like saved for a rainy day, like, or just saved for a later day rather. I mean, people still complain about systems integrations, and we're about to get to a point where, again, like the AI that I'm using in Vizier and the AI that I'm using in Workday and the AI that I'm using in Beamery are all going to need to actually interface. And by the way, I'm a Microsoft shop. Am I going to be integrating all these just through Copilot? And is that like there is just like a whole new layer of technical best practice that, again, HR will maybe partner with IT on, but HR needs to be informed and have an informed perspective on solutioning for it. Yeah, it's an interesting time, because I just see this as catalytic, not just transformation, but transformational, but catalytic in just pulling together a lot of things that we have been kicking around and just haven't figured out to date. Now it's all, I think, just coming together at this just really interesting intersection. And I mean, I love the concept of AIQ. I was just say AAIQ, but like, because it is, I think, a core or maybe the most critical competency for HR organizations to be up leveling. It really is going to change the game. If you want to stick your head in the sand, I'm sure that there are plenty of companies that are still not on an ATS yet that you can go and hide away in. But if you want to be at the top of your game or even just still relevant in the game, this is going to be the most important part.
No, absolutely. I think the sooner people can start, the better off. I mean, even if it's just thinking about it through a consumerization of IT kind of lens, like just see how it helps you with personal thing. Go plan a trip. Go, figure out how to, work with, do a home improvement, project. Because in some ways, it's funny. Like I think about these multi-agent kind of workflows or connecting a copilot to an agent to a GPT or whatever. It's like who's the who's the general contractor that's gonna like sort of organize all these subs? Who are you going to have one interface, voice or text that then knows where to go? Oh, go talk to V for Vizier to get access to this people analytics data. And is it going to know? And how
Yeah.
is it going to know? It's almost like this sort of, I'm dating myself, but enterprise service bus kind of thing for a services oriented architecture
I
or
like
whatever.
leaning back into where we've been, though, because this isn't all completely novel. Again, there's just stuff that we've been trying to figure out before.
So in your work as, I mean, sort of changing topics a little bit, but when you think about like market research, Aptitude has experimented, or you've personally experimented with, like, do you have a research assistant now, or do you have?
I've used it, but I also I've used it and be like, no, that's not the right answer. But that's still fine, because it's still better to have the wrong answer. Like if I'm looking at it like, just give me something to think about, like give me some questions for an interview I'm about to jump into, or like here are all of my notes from an entire 2 days of meetings. help me find the 5 most important things. Like, I will disagree with it. I will take what it says and then make it my own. Like, I do use it. Um, do Madeline and I still need to get a research assistant or junior analyst? I think so. And that's where, like, people assuming that this is just putting people out of jobs and doing human work. I mean, maybe some are being impacted, like graphic designers or something, but like, we use graphic designers, we need to lay out an entire white paper with the copy that we've written and the analysis that we have. Like, there's still a lot that needs to be done, but I use it, and I actually like learning what it doesn't do well for me. Like, instead of just saying the AI didn't work, I'm never using it again. It's like, oh, well, same thing as like Boolean search. I need to adjust my prompt. I need to adjust my search string. Like, I need to learn how to interact with this. Like, it's, you know, if I send you a question, you're like, I'm not sure I understood that, but here's what I think you are looking for. I'll email you back and say, Bob, that's not what I meant. You're like, oh, okay. No, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's part of scoping out. I guess you were looking to hire somebody or something to do a certain set of tasks. You may realize that, yeah, you need someone to provide this, but maybe I only need to pay a human to do, this particular set of tasks, and then they'll augment themselves with.
But you won't know until you know, like, until you've actually gotten your hands dirty with it. You will just assume that AI can't do this. Dude, like, what?
Yeah. Well, the other thing is just keeping, we can't lose our minds and our critical thinking about using these technologies. I mean, I've used some that make these, bold, ambitious promises, but then you use it and it's like, hey, that's like, you know, this has a ways to go, right? And things are moving rapidly, so maybe check back in 3 months, 6 months, or whatever. But some of this stuff is pretty rough, so you've got to be sensitive to the marketing your latest shiny object kind of mentality from the providers. And there's certainly no shortage of tools and options out there. So
Right, but how can you even find the right one if you, again, don't have that baseline literacy? You're going to be prone to shiny object syndrome, or you're going to be overly cynical and still, in either situation, uninformed. So,
well, I think community comes into play here too, right? Because you can share best practices, you can share lessons learned. I tried this for this particular task. Here's where it falls short, or whatever. So I think, we can't all. There's not enough hours in the day for each of us to try everything. So leverage those communities, whether it's a vendor supported community or just a community of interest or people in specific roles or whatever.
are you and me? Hit me up. Like, let's chat about what's working, what's not. I think it's way better than sitting at home with your arms crossed saying it can't do this for me, or I don't think that we should be doing XYZ. Like, talk to folks.
Exactly. Kyle, I know we got to wrap things up. Thank you, Kyle, so much for your time, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and see you next time.
Sweet.